Hi there! We're back with TKC's Service Tomorrow. My name is Tinky Bart and I'm the CEO of TKC Digital. And we help you to answer your customers' questions first time right, everywhere. We are knowledge management experts and we have expertise in content creation, conversational copy and technology. And all of us at TKC welcome you here at Service Tomorrow. And Service Tomorrow is a series of really exciting webinars on how we can remove the bot from the human so we can deliver really great, memorable experiences. And we're in great company because we've invited a lineup of experienced speakers with great track records who will all delight us with new insights on customer service strategy, technology and methodology. And today I'm accompanied by Sean Smith. And Sean is a CX guru, a very experienced CX consultant and best-selling author. He wrote books like How to Be Bold in Business and On Purpose. And he will kick off our first show with amazing examples of customer experiences and CX strategy. And Sean, when I first met you, I learned about the Peak-End rule, the power of one, creating intentional and memorable experiences, and how to be different in service, how to differentiate, and how to create emotional bonding with customers. And that always touched me, and I was really happy to have you here today. And today you will present about delivering customer experiences across multiple channels. And in my opinion, that's a perfect start of our series of webinars for Service Tomorrow. So I'm so happy to have you here on stage, and the floor is all yours, Sean.
Well, Tinky, thank you very much indeed for those very kind remarks. So some people believe that the future of customer experience is technological. Some people believe that all we need to do is to reduce customer effort and we'll create a wonderful experience for our customers. But I think that's wrong. I think one of the things that we've learned from COVID-19 is that we have to have people at the heart of the brand experience, that we need to have people at the very center of how we deliver our brand to our customers. And that yes, our customers want a simple transaction. Yes, they want to make it as easy as possible. But when we have an issue, when we have a problem, we want somebody who has the knowledge, the content to be able to help us with that in the most effective way. So in my presentation today, I'd like to talk to you about how we need both the bot and the human, but we need to be intentional in the way that we use both. So let me share my screen and we can go into it from here. So hopefully you should be seeing my screen now. So I'm going to be talking to you about how we deliver a customer experience across multiple channels in a very intentional way. And let me start by really summarizing two fundamental trends that we're seeing in society. And these trends were from David Matten, the head of global trends and insights for Trend Watching. And David says that there are two key trends. And the first of those is the need for meaning and belonging. Connection, loyalty, it's that sort of high touch experience, if you will. And we're seeing a lot of organizations, a lot of brands who are really embracing the notion of purpose, the notion of doing good for society. In the pandemic, we've seen that consumers have really welcomed those brands that have helped them with their lives and made it more easier for them. But on the other hand, we're also having another trend, and that trend is towards making things simpler and frictionless and much more convenient and low touch and easy. And the trend towards automation, if you will. And both of these trends are important. And David said, two vastly powerful trends are reshaping the world around us. Now, every business must ask itself, which side of the line do we fall on? And we've seen examples of brands like PayPal and Amazon that are very much on the line of making it easy, making it simple, making it frictionless for our customers. But equally, we've seen brands like Umpqua Bank in the States, the community-based bank, Airbnb, that are very much differentiated around making it much more personalized for the customer, much more of an intimate experience. But I would argue that actually post-pandemic, For those of you that are really wanting to thrive in the new world, we need both. We need to make it high tech and high touch. We need to bring them together. And a great example of this is a very simple example is Amazon's Echo, the Alexa. If we think of Alexa, what we have here is a very simple, smart piece of technology that makes it extremely easy to do what you need to do, and at the same time is highly personalized, and over time becomes more and more personalized to us as consumers. Let's look at a more sophisticated example. I'm sure many of you will recognize this as an MRI scanner or CT scanner. Hopefully not many of you will have experienced being in one, but if you have, you'll know what it's like. You go into this very claustrophobic small tunnel. The machine starts up and there's a very deep resonating noise. There's this horrible noise that you get, which is extremely loud and disconcerting. You have to stay absolutely still in order for the machine to work. It's a horrible experience. Now imagine you are 3 years old. Imagine you're a child with cancer and you have to go into this machine. You have to be subjected to this noise and the vibration and the claustrophobia, and you're not allowed to move. As you can imagine, few children are able to do that. And in fact, there's a very high failure rate for these tests. And in fact, what they have to do is to give the children drugs in order to keep them still and so on. So it's a horrible experience. Well, interestingly enough, and of course it's all about high technology, but interestingly enough, about 2 weeks ago, Royal Philips announced a partnership with Walt Disney to create a new kind of experience, particularly for children. And what Disney have done is to create content, knowledge management, based around cartoon characters, or based around stories. Philips have created a whole ambient environment which is personalized to the patient, whether it's a child or an adult, with lighting, with sound, with music, with video, and so on. So the whole experience is one which is much more magical, much more experiential. And they've had some amazing results with being able to have children experience this without all the stress and without the need for drugs. So a great example of high tech and high touch. And we're seeing this in every market. As I go around the world, working with clients all over the world and speaking to them, in every market you can see this happening. And that is in the early stages of a market. If you have a great product that is functional, it does what it says, you can be very successful. But what we know is that as soon as you've got that great product, then somebody else will come along with a similar product or perhaps even a better product. And what starts happening is the consumer has a choice. They could choose that product or that product. So the consumer says, well, okay, who's going to give me the best service? So they start looking for value-added services to make their decision, their choice. But I would argue that in most marketplaces around the world now, consumers have so much choice. We can buy whatever we want, whenever we want, wherever we want. We have so much choice that having a great product is no longer enough. Even having great service is no longer enough because most brands provide good service. In order to win in this marketplace, what we have to do is create an experience that creates a memory, that creates an affection for the brand, that creates an emotion, if you will. And great experienced brands do 4 things. First of all, they're consistent. So you can absolutely rely on them. You can predict what that experience is going to be like. Whichever channel, whichever location, whichever day of the week, it's consistent. Secondly, it's intentional. We get the sense that this brand has thought very carefully about the experience they want us to have, and they've designed it. It isn't just left to chance. Thirdly, it's different from competitors in some meaningful way that creates value for those customers. So 4 things: consistency, intentionality, differentiation, and value. And a great example of this is mobile phone market. Let's think about Nokia. Where is Nokia today? You remember when Nokia was our favorite phone? It was our favorite smart device. Everybody had Nokias. It was a wonderful product, market leading. where is Nokia today? They've gone because it was only a product. What they failed to do was to make the migration to value-added services and experiences in the way that this brand did, Apple. If we think of Apple, Apple is now, as you know, along with Amazon, the most profitable company in the world, hugely profitable, $1 trillion company. And of course, Apple started by making great products and still do. The design of their products is fantastic, but they very quickly migrated to adding services. So things like iTunes, for example, or Apple Pay are services independent of the product. And of course, today, Apple is an experienced brand. When you go into their retail stores like this one, they are very different from any other store you go into. In fact, I often joke that their stores are like a cathedral to the brand. You go there to worship Apple. And I'm joking, but you know what I mean. It's really a place that you go to if you love Apple as a brand. So we've seen this migration. And when you do that, when you're able to create both functional and emotional bonding with customers, that makes a big difference. Research by IBM and Ogilvy found that if you're able to achieve both, then retention ratios go to 84% versus 30% if you're providing only the functional benefit. So we need both high tech and high touch. So, and when you do that, it really does drive growth. So the same research from IBM and Ogilvy found that those brands that provide great experiences, superior experiences, grow 5 times faster than those that don't, 5 times faster. And more recently, I've seen some research coming out of post-COVID, so in April of this year, that shows that those brands that provide great experiences are recovering much, much, much faster than those that don't from the crisis. So we're going to see this is becoming even more important. So with that, let me go back to this chart and ask you, how does your organization compete? Are you competing primarily on the basis of your products and what they do? Are you competing primarily on the basis of added value services that maybe surround those products? Or are you competing on the basis of an experience that is consistent, intentional, differentiated, and valuable? You have an opportunity of letting me know. So you can either go to menti.com, and you can see the address here, and put in the code that you see on the screen, or you can use your smartphone and use the QR code to go to the same site. But if you do that, you'll be able to indicate which of these 3 ways you feel you compete, whether it's products or services and experiences. And we'll be monitoring your results and looking at those in just a moment. So I'm going to continue, and then as we get the results, we'll see what those look like, and we can go from there. So whilst we're waiting for those results to come in, and perhaps I could ask somebody to let me know when we've got all the results in. The question is, how do you become an experienced brand? Well, based on the research that I did for my last book on purpose, there are 3 ways that you become an experienced brand. The first is you need to stand up. And by that, I mean you need to be really clear about what your purpose is and how you create meaning for your customers. The second thing you need to do is to stand out. And that means you need to differentiate your experience from competitors in a way that creates value for your customers. And thirdly, you need to stand firm. And by that, I mean creating a culture that sustains you. Now, I think we've got all the results in. And it seems like that certainly the majority of you are saying that right now you're competing on the basis of the services. Some of you are saying on product, and a few are saying on the experience, which is great. But majority seem to feel that you're differentiating or competing on the basis of value-added services. So the challenge for you is to move from that to competing on the basis of the experience, because when you do, you grow 5 times faster. And as I said, there are 3 ways of doing that. Be clear about what you stand for, create a different kind of experience, and create a culture that sustains you. So let's look at each of these in turn. Let's start with standing up. And a good example of this, and one of my favorite brands in the UK, is a bank called First Direct. And First Direct is called First Direct because it was the first online bank. It was the first bank, in fact, that operated wholly through contact centers and then online. It doesn't have any stores or branches. And its proposition 25 years ago and still today is, we're here for you. We are the bank designed to fit around you, not you around us. Now, it's interesting, I'm sure you've had the experience through COVID of trying to get through to your telecoms provider or your broadband provider or whatever, and there being a message saying something like, oh, because of the unusual circumstances of COVID, we have unusually long waiting times, and it could be 40 or 50 minutes, or please don't call us, go online. Terrible. And of course, it was very difficult for many of these organizations to be able to provide the same level of service because of staff shortages and so on. But interestingly, First Direct put on its website this message: we're still available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. First Direct hasn't closed once since we opened, and we don't intend for coronavirus to change that. You can still always get through to a real human first on our main line without having to press button 1 or press button 2. And I'm a customer of them, and I can tell you they delivered on that. However they did it, I don't know, but they managed to find the staff in their contact center and so on to be able to provide that instant level of service. And customers really, really welcome that. They're also really, really tuned into what customers are saying. So here on their website, for example, you can see they are monitoring social media feeds and Twitter and so on, and instantly analyzing the sentiment and the results. And as you can see at the bottom of the slide there, they're measuring the 76.71% of customers are making positive comments, neutral, negative. They're also monitoring the sentiment analysis in terms of the words that are used in terms of positive and negative. So they're constantly listening to their customers and they're responding accordingly. So the bank designed to fit around you. They've delivered on their promise and really brought together high tech and high touch. The second thing we need to do is to stand out. And by stand out, I mean creating an experience that really differentiates you from your competitors. Now, Tinky in her introduction talked about something called the peak end experience. And some of you may have read the book by Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel laureate, Thinking Fast and Slow. And if you haven't, I really recommend that you read it. It's a really interesting, in-depth understanding of customer behavior. But one of the things that Daniel Kahneman talks about is that actually we have two selves. We have our experiencing self and our remembering self. So our experiencing self is what we experience at the moment it happens. And our remembering self is how we think about it afterwards and what we really remember. And I'm sure you've all had that situation where you go on holiday and you come back and somebody says to you, oh, how was your holiday? And you say, oh, well, it was great. We had this fantastic trip to wherever, but then we lost our bags. And, when we got back, it was really awful because we'd lost our bags. So we remember the peaks and we often remember the last thing that happened to us. So what we remember isn't actually the experience, it's how we perceive the experience to be. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters because if we're designing an experience, which we do for our clients, we try to design it in a way that the peaks are aligned with what the brand stands for. And we also try to design it in a way that it creates a memorable moment at the ending, because that's what people really take away and remember. So let's look at an example of this. Let's take, do you remember when we used to go flying? I know we don't anymore, but in the days when we used to go flying, if we think about the passenger journey, and if we look at a typical passenger journey, it's getting to the airport, and we've got all that stress. Will there be congestion on the way to the airport? Will the taxi turn up on time? And then we get to the airport, and there's the frustration of check-in and security lines and all of the inconvenience that we have in having to wait around. And then we go into the lounge, and perhaps if we're flying business class, that's quite pleasant. It gets a little bit better. We have a cup of coffee, we perhaps read the paper, and then we got on board the aircraft. Now, most people find that that's the least stressful part of it, because you're in your seat, you're on your way, a lot of the stress is gone, and perhaps you have a drink, gin and tonic or something that makes life a lot better. Maybe you have some food or watch a movie, and then you start getting bored. If it's a long flight, you start getting a little bit bored and wanting to get there. And then, of course, when we get to the other end, we've got, well, my bags arrive. You're feeling, if it's a long haul flight, a little bit unkempt. You're feeling that your clothes are a mess, and then you've got to get to your destination, which is unfamiliar. So the whole thing is very stressful. But the question is this: where do you think most airlines believe the passenger journey starts? And I can tell you the answer to this because I've asked many audiences and many airlines, and what they all say is when you get on board the aircraft. Or sometimes they say when you check in, but usually it's when you get on board the aircraft. And then I say, and where do you think the journey finishes? And they say, when you get off the aircraft. Now, if you believe that, then the question is, where do you compete? And the answer, of course, is, well, you compete in that bit in the middle of in-flight. And that's why most airlines are worried about offering you, a better seat or a different kind of chicken or more in-flight entertainment. That's where they put their money. But the fact is that for passengers, when you say to people, where does the stress start? They say, leaving home, or maybe booking the flight and getting to the destination. And so when we think about the peak end experience, we actually look at it in a very different way. And if we look at one airline that looked at it very differently, which was Virgin Atlantic. Now, Virgin Atlantic's values are fun, entertainment, irreverence, and innovation. And if that's what your brand stands for, what would you do to differentiate the experience? Well, what Virgin did was they did some research with business class passengers, and they found exactly what I just showed you, which is the various stress points. And they said, okay, how can we deliver our brand values in a way which creates value for customers and relieve some of that stress? So they introduced a product called Virgin Upper Class. And Virgin Upper Class is a kind of a combination of business class with superior business class. And if you book Virgin Upper Class, the journey looks like this, which is they pick you up from your office or your home in a limousine. So they take away the stress of getting to the airport. They check you in the car. And when you get to the airport, they have their own private security channel, so that you've got the Virgin Atlantic security people who are welcoming and smiling. We don't often see that in airports. And you go through the private security channel, and they promise you from curbside to lounge in 10 minutes because you're already checked in. And then you go into the clubhouse, which is their lounge, which is very entertaining, a lot of fun. And then you got on board the aircraft. Now, they are competitive, but that's not where they choose to over-index. That's not where they choose to invest. So if you fly Virgin Atlantic, you'll find that the aircraft are fine, but they're not the most modern. If you want the most modern airplanes, then you'll need to fly on somebody like Emirates or Etihad or one of those airlines, Singapore Airlines. But Virgin airplanes are fine, but they're not the most modern. So that's not where they spend the money. When you get to arrival, they have their arrivals lounge where you can have a shower, you can have your suit pressed, you can have breakfast, you can have a meeting, and then they'll take you to your destination in a car. Now, you may say, well, that's a very expensive thing to do. Well, actually, it's not. Compared to buying brand new airplanes, it's not expensive. And yet, it's much more valuable for the customers. So what they've done is create these moments. So here's their clubhouse, their club lounge, which is entertaining. They've got music and so on. And here's their onboard bar. So if you fly upper class, Virgin, you get to go to the bar and you can sit there and have a drink. Across the Atlantic, there's been many a business deal done. There's been many a romantic relationship started. There's been many a friendship started drinking champagne across the Atlantic. So that's a sort of signature thing for Virgin. So what I'm saying with all of this is that we really need to think about the brand and how you create these peak end experiences. But of course, we know that now customer experience is now multi-channel. It requires contact centers and retail stores and automation and social media, all of these ways we communicate. And we need to think how we deliver our brand promise, how we deliver our brand voice across all of these channels. I was talking with Tinky earlier, and we were reflecting on the fact that, sometimes you talk to somebody in the call center and they're a very pleasant person, or in the retail store, and then you get an email and it's very official, it's very formal. The tone of voice is very different. Or on social media, there's a very different tone of voice. And somehow they need to be joined up. We need to make it seamless. So let's look at transforming the contact center, because that's so important now. Interestingly enough, that recent research done by NICE has found that even younger generations like millennials still like the human touch. So for simple things like transactions, we're very happy to deal with automation. We're very happy to deal with a text or a chat or a bot for simple things. But if we've got a more complex problem, or if we've got a difficulty, and then what we love dealing with is a person. We want to deal with somebody that can be really knowledgeable. They've got the content, they've got the knowledge management systems to really help us. And that's true even with the younger generations. And the older you are, the more true that is. So when you're like me, a boomer, then we much prefer dealing with a person than dealing with automation. But both are important. And that requires us to think differently about the contact center. And I use the term, or we use the term in Smith & Co, the experience center. We say that if your contact center is really, really good, you can actually create an experience center, a hallmark for the brand, where it's the place where people go to really experience your brand. And Zappos, the retailer in the States, is a great example of that. Zappos' purpose is delivering happiness. They just happen to sell shoes online, but their real purpose is delivering happiness. And because they only do it online, Tony Hsieh, the chief executive, who very sadly died last year, but Tony Hsieh said, we want to provide the best experience to our contact centers that clients can possibly ever get. But the interesting thing is that, as many of you know, with contact centers, in the early stages of a contact center, most of them were set up on the basis of efficiency. So it was about interaction management. It was about mainly dealing with inbound calls. It was all about minimizing cost and giving customers support at minimum cost. So it was really about things like average handling times, abandoned call rates. So most of the measures were about productivity measures. And it was really as though we need to provide after-sale support, but how can we do so in a way which costs us as little as possible? Now, of course, some contact centers have evolved beyond that. And they've said, well, actually, it's a very useful channel for selling or for satisfying customers. We can use it as a way of getting more business. So they've become much more focused on effectiveness. So it's about CRM. It's more about outbound calls. It's more focused on revenue, and it's more about creating sales. But of course, some organizations have gone too far in that direction. And we've all experienced the spam calls. We've all experienced when somebody calls us up and tries to sell us something, and actually it makes us think even worse about the brand. So that's not necessarily suitable either. So we suggest the best is a combination of both, where you create an experience. It's customer experience management, it's multi-directional, it's multi-channel, it focuses on the relationship with the customer, and it's really all about creating customer advocacy. That's the result that we're looking for, is creating customer advocacy. And that requires a different way of thinking about the contact center. So I'm not going to go through this in detail. If you'd like, we can provide you with a little self-assessment, which will allow you to decide where you are, and we can get that to you. But if we look at the experience column, it really requires a different level of sponsorship. And I was talking with Tinky about this earlier, which is, if it's all about efficiency, it's usually driven by the Chief Technology Officer or the Information Officer. If it's really about effectiveness, it's usually driven by marketing, because they would want to make more sales. But actually, if it's about the experience, we need the C-suite to own it. When we need the Chief Executive to say, this is an important thing for us to deliver our brand, and we need to work together to do that. It's about creating value for the customer, not just value for the enterprise. It focuses around people and interaction, so the bot and the human in an appropriate way. It's multi-directional, multi-channel. Its purpose is to create customer advocacy, so customers recommending the brand. The payoff for the customer is emotional. That's certainly the case with Zappos. Customers love Zappos. We have an affection for these brands like First Direct that really are there for us. And that shows up in terms of Net Promoter Score and customer lifetime value. So with that, let's come back to the chart. And let me ask you this question. Where are you? If you have a contact center, are you competing primarily on the basis of efficiency? So you're measuring things like average handling time. Are you competing primarily on the basis of effectiveness, which is about sales, and you probably measure things like first call resolution and perhaps sales? Or are you competing on the basis of experiences, which is multi-directional and channel? It's much more customer focused, and what you're measuring is customer advocacy through NPS or something similar. So once again, you can either go to menti.com or use the QR code to let me know your views. And whilst you're doing that, I'll continue and I'll monitor the screen and let you know the results as they come in. So, are you competing on the basis of efficiency, effectiveness, or experiences? So with that, it takes us to our last section in the time that we have left. And that section is Stand Firm. And standing firm is about creating a culture that sustains you. And one of the things that we've seen through COVID-19 is the importance of our people, of managing their welfare as well as that of our customers, of making sure that they are okay and are able to do their jobs, even under very difficult circumstances. And I can see the results coming in now, and it looks like that a few of you are focused on efficiency. The majority are focused on effectiveness, and then quite a few are also focused on the experience as well. So congratulations, that's great. But it looks like there's an opportunity for some of you to move up that scale of evolution towards creating those experiences. And in this last section, we'll say a little bit more about how to do that. So standing firm. How do you create a culture that does that? Well, of course, Zappos does it through creating happiness for its employees. Tony Hsieh was famous for creating a work environment which was really, really motivating for all of his people and creating such a lot of fun, delivering happiness for both employees and customers. One of the things that Ronan Dunn, the chief executive of O2, said some years ago was that if you cannot turn your employees into fans, there's no way that you will turn your customers into fans. So if you want to create fans of your customers, start with your employees. So how do you do that? Well, I'm going to finish with a case study from one of our clients, which I think will hopefully answer the question. And the client is Estée Lauder. I'm sure many of you will know Estée Lauder, the the cosmetics brand, global cosmetics brand, a $1 trillion company. And Estée Lauder, in fact, owns 27 different brands. So you may recognize brands like Clinique or MAC, very different kind of brands, but all owned. Now, the interesting thing is that Estée Lauder, the founder, the person that started it, had this conception, this idea of the high-touch experience. She wanted to create a high-touch experience for her clients. And as over the years, as they've acquired 27 different brands, the brand Estée Lauder had kind of lost that. They'd lost that notion. So they asked us to work with them to create the new high-touch experience for Estée Lauder. So they challenged us to define what prestige beauty experience would be like, which is the consistent retail experience that lies at the heart of all of the group's different brands. So all very different brands, very different positioning, but they wanted this common area, this prestige beauty experience, to be at the heart of it. So we did a lot of research, and I won't go through all of that, but based on that research, we created this brand promise of bringing the best to everyone we touch. And we said there are 3 dimensions to this brand promise, this experience: the inspiring touch, the welcoming touch, and the personal touch, based on the research that we did. And we said that these 3 things were true for all of the brands, irrespective of the positioning of the brand, but all 3 of them needed to be able to be inspiring, welcoming, and personal. And under each of them, we defined some brand behaviors and commitments. Now, I'm not going to go through these on the call, we don't need to, but the point was that we were very explicit and detailed about what each of these 3 things meant for these brands. And we mapped the customer experience, and we also did that in the contact center. So here's one of our charts from the research that we did in the contact center. And you can see you've got the customer journey going from greeting all the way through to no holds and closing. And we did 2 sorts of observations. We did physical observations where we were in the contact center listening to calls, and we also examined and analyzed all of their recordings. And we charted the quality of those calls at each touch point. And as you can see, the yellow line, which is the observations, scores significantly higher, particularly for the sales and control touch point, rather than the blue line, which are the recordings. So that's interesting, because what it says is that clearly the contact center staff know what to do and how to do it, but did it much more when they were being observed than when they were simply being recorded. So when we had one of our teams sitting there, they were very, very good, much better than when they were simply being recorded. But the black line at the bottom is a correlation with the customer's end emotion. So what we also did was analyze the emotion of the customer at certain points and correlated that. And that told us what the current picture was like. What we then did was to overlay it with the design experience. So the yellow line with the orange stars was the high touch experience that we designed. And you can see that the first touch point greeting is WT, the welcoming touch. You'd expect it. That's where you really demonstrate your welcome. Where we get to telephone etiquette, for example, it's very much a personal touch. So how do you personalize it? When you get to products and services touch point, that's where you want to be inspiring. You want to inspire the customer. And when you get to the end, of course, the closing, you want to make it welcoming and personal. So we designed the ideal experience, and then what we did was to train all of the contact center agents how to deliver that. Now, the interesting thing is that when we were working with them, the agents could answer questions from any customer. The customer would call in, they didn't know who the customer was, they didn't know which brand it was, and it could be one of 27 different brands. So it was almost impossible for them to create that branded experience. As a result of this work, we formed them into 5 different teams, and each team only handled a smaller number of brands, and they were taught about the tone of voice of that brand. So as soon as the customer called in, that customer was identified by a brand. So the agent knew, oh, this is a Clinique customer or it's a Mac customer. And so they were able to talk in a way which was much more on brand. So Clinique is much more formal, Mac is much younger. They were able to use appropriate language and knowledge management systems to be able to speak. So it's the high touch and high tech. And the results were quite profound. So they extended the high touch experience across all of their stores and all of their contact centers. The net promoter score from customers grew by 30 points. Complaints fell by 50%. The employee NPS increased by 32 points. In fact, we found there's a very strong correlation between the NPS for employees and customers. So it goes back to the point of getting it right for your employees first. And unsolicited compliments shot up by over 300%. And you can see one of the comments from a customer there. So it isn't just about the people, it's also about the text, the email, or whatever it might be. So a great example, I think, of an experience center and delivering their promise through high tech and high touch. So I'm going to leave you with that thought because we're going to go into Q&A now. But I'd like to leave you with this thought, which is the experience you deliver to your customers every day does one of two things. It either builds value for your brand or it destroys value for your brand. And that is a choice. And I encourage you all to think about how you can deliver that experience, which creates value for your customers and for your brand. Because I think as we come out of COVID-19, this is going to become even more important. And the brands that will win will be those that create that high touch, high tech experience. It's about removing the bot from the human, being great at both. Thank you. So I think, Tinky, we have an opportunity for some questions now.
Yeah, we do. And you've already touched upon knowledge management during your talk, which in my opinion was really inspiring once again. So I'm really happy with that. Thank you so much. But how will an organization truly bring its brand alive by, applying knowledge management in the right way? Can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah. One of the problems we see working many organizations, is we have a notion we call loose tight. So many organizations are very tight when it comes to telling people what to do, the procedures, the policies, the guidelines. So people are told exactly what to do, and that puts them in a straitjacket. But they're very loose when it comes to telling people, what does our brand stand for? What are our brand values? What kind of experience do you want to create for our customers? And what we advocate is reversing those two things so that you're very tight about what the brand stands for, the brand values, the kind of brand behaviors, if you will, the kind of experience you want to create for your customers. And then you're a little bit looser in empowering people to behave in a way that delivers that. It gives them a little bit more flexibility, a bit more freedom to be able to respond in an authentic way to the customers. But in order for that to happen, your people absolutely have to understand what the brand stands for and what you're trying to deliver. They also need really good knowledge management systems and content in order to be able to apply that information, that knowledge to the customer in a way which is creating value for that customer. So knowledge management, and I think content management is vital, particularly when it's very much aligned to what the brand stands for.
Well, I couldn't agree more, of course. So totally with you on this one. And still we see that there's sometimes trouble in positioning this, like you just said, right, at the C-level boardroom. I would like to make it more boardroom material. So what would be your advice?
Well, it's interesting. The reason that I wrote my last book, we wrote our last book on purpose, creating a branded experience that people love, is because I think we're at one of those pivotal times in history, we're actually seeing a big change in the marketplace. And the change that we're seeing is over the last 40 or 50 years, many organizations have been influenced by the teaching of people like Milton Friedman, the American economist, who have preached that the sole purpose of an organization is to create shareholder value. And many Western organizations, particularly in the US, but also in Europe too, have really embarked on that philosophy of it's all about shareholder value and short-term earnings, quarterly earnings, and so on. I think because of the financial services crisis, what we've seen is that consumers have become very cynical about large organizations, particularly banks and so on, very cynical. And with COVID now, and we've seen that some organizations have performed and behaved very well, and others have very badly. I don't think consumers are prepared to accept that anymore. I think consumers are looking to do business with brands they admire and they have affection for, who they feel are there for them, that are purpose-driven. So the point I guess I'm making with all of this is that purpose should be at the center, and purpose needs to be owned by the chief executive and the C-suite. And if the organization sees that its purpose is really about providing value for customers and society, that's where you start. That's the conversation you have. And you say, how do we deliver that? Well, we need to do it through delivering the brand and the experience. And you can have that conversation. The problem is that if you've got one of these older organizations that sees that its purpose is delivering shareholder value, that's what the chief executive focuses on. The chief executive and the chief financial officer are only concerned about making money. And they leave the experience to the customer service director. And they leave the employee, the culture to the HR director. And so the organization is very siloed. So long answer to your question, Tinky, but I think what we need to do is to get back to really understanding the purpose of an organization, and that purpose has to be owned by the complete leadership team.
Well, and if that can be the multiplier for even bigger shareholder value, then that's a no-brainer, right?
Exactly, exactly. Well, you're absolutely right, because the evidence is, the research is, that if you focus on creating value for your customers, then you'll become more successful and create value for your shareholders, absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's go and do that, people. And Sean, I'd really like to thank you so much again. Oh, there's one more question. I see it. I will just look back. How would you determine what kind of touch you want to add with a point in the customer journey?
Very good question. Thank you. That's a great question. And that's fundamental to the kind of work that we do. So when we do our research, I know there isn't time to go into the sort of the detail of how we do this, but when we do the research, we first of all start by asking customers what's really important for them, what their expectations are, and what are the key touch points. And then we create a survey. So the survey is absolutely designed around what customers value. And we then use regression analysis and statistical analysis to identify which touch points have the biggest impact on customer satisfaction. So that tells us which touch points to focus on. And then what we do is to say, and what does this brand want to promise? What's its promise? How does it want to differentiate? And which touch points can you differentiate? So by looking at those two things, we're then able to identify what we call the hallmarks. So the hallmarks for a brand, and there are only usually 2 or 3, are those touch points where the brand can really differentiate. So that's a very short answer to a complex question, but I can certainly send some more information on that if you're interested.
Well, that would be really great. So it's about the peaks that you align with what the brands stand for, right? What
Exactly.
You just said during your talk. Yeah, good. There's one more. Hi, Sean, great share. Taking the bot out of the human and with advancing artificial intelligence, where do you see the most important touch points or moments of truth?
I think it really does depend on what we've just said, really. It really does depend on the brand. It depends on the nature of the product or service that you're providing and the nature of the channels that you're delivering it through. and that varies enormously. So, for example, when we were working with PayPal, the key channel for PayPal is obviously online. And PayPal's promise is simple, safe, secure. That's what it promises. Safe, simple, secure transactions. So one of the things we did there was we said, okay, what's a key touch point? And a key touch point is when you make a transaction. I'm sure you've all had that experience of making a transaction and you click and nothing happens. And you think, oh, did it go through? Did I pay? If I click again, will I be paying twice? And so you've got stress and anxiety. That was a key touch point. And so for PayPal, because their promise is safe, simple, secure, when you click, when you make a transaction, a little pop-up box comes up saying, sweet, it worked. And it brings a smile to your face. You think, oh, that's great. Sweet, it worked. It tells me that it worked, and it's very much on their tone of voice. When we were working with Burberry, obviously, which is the luxury fashion retailer, the key touch point there was the fitting room. Because when you're buying a very high-end, expensive trench coat, for example, the fitting room experience and the advice that you get from the salesperson is absolutely crucial. So that was the key touch point. And what they needed in the fitting room was to have plasma screens, which gave them information about how the coat was made and where it was made and so on and so forth. So it really does depend on the research and the brand and the channel.
Yeah, and also I think when you're talking about removing the bot from the human is freeing your employees from repetitive work that they should not be doing. And if you can have a robot do that for you, then there's more space and openness for the employee to be more brand related, right?
That's exactly right, Tinky. I mean, if you think back to a number of years ago when ATMs first were introduced into the financial services sector, and we first started many years ago going and putting our card in the slot and getting money out, right? People predicted that was the future of banking, that everything would be automated and we would simply go and get our money from a cash dispenser. And of course, we couldn't, we don't use them so often now, but that was true. It became a very efficient way of getting money, and people much rather would go to a cash dispenser and get their money than have to queue up in a bank. Yeah. But we wouldn't go to a cash dispenser to get financial advice, and we wouldn't go to a cash dispenser to organize a mortgage, or we wouldn't go to a cash dispenser to have a problem solved. That's where we need people, and that's why I think we need both. That bots are important, people are important, and we shouldn't try and replace one with the other.
Totally agree. One more, and I think last question. Great example of Estée Lauder. It seems to me that this is also vital to keeping experimenting with improving the service. How would you advise companies to do so? Is it possible to do low-key or all-in?
I didn't hear the last point. Is it possible to do what?
Low-key or all-in?
Oh, okay. I think, once again, it depends on the organization and the nature. So when I use the Burberry example, we piloted in 5 cities, stores in 5 cities, the retail experience before it rolled out worldwide. In the case of Estée Lauder, we piloted with 3 brands before it rolled out across all of the other brands. The benefit of piloting something is you can really prove that it works, you can refine it, and also when you do roll out, you can say, here are the results we're achieving. And we know that there's a lot of resistance in organizations, and that if you can say to executives, here are the results we're achieving, wouldn't you like those results? Then the resistance tends to go away. So I think piloting is usually the way we would go, particularly if the solution is kind of behavioral in nature, where it's you're going to be doing some training and so on. Obviously, there are some types of solutions which are technological, and you can't really pilot in one place. You've either got to do it for everybody, or you don't do it at all, because it's a centralized system. And then, of course, then you just have to bite the bullet, as we say, and implement it for everybody. But generally speaking, as I say, when we're working with clients, we generally advise trying to pilot, first of all, particularly with measurement systems. It's amazing the number of clients, organizations that go to Salesforce or one of the other technology providers and buy in a system and expect the system to create the experience, to design the experience. But of course, it's completely the wrong way around. What we say is design your experience, test it, refine it, and then find the best technology to enable it. And I know that one of the things that you do in TKC Digital, Tinky, is to recommend the best solutions to your clients based on their needs.
Exactly. And I think that's a very good final remark. Take it step by step, learn along the way, and adjust whilst you're doing that. And keep in mind your brand and the brand experience, the brand promise. And well, I really hope that everyone who was joining us today learned about this, just like I did a couple of years ago and again today. So thank you for having for being here today, Sean, and I really appreciate it. I've learned new things again, so I'm really happy with that. And people, there is so much more to come. This was the first start, the first show of Service Tomorrow, but there's 8 more webinars coming up. The next one will be hosted by Andrew Davids from Conversationals, and he will be talking about the seamless integration between chatbots and agents. I'm looking forward to that. It will be on April 21st, and make sure you sign up for that performance. And then there's 8 more or 7 more after that webinars to come. And we will share which ones those will be in the video, in the after movie after this show. So thank you for joining us. Hope to see you again soon, and have a great day and stay safe. Bye-bye. Thanks, Sean.
Hi, I'm Andrew Davids, founder of Conversationals and Seamly. On the 21st of April, we'll be talking about how to integrate excellent experiences between chatbots and live chat agents. So I hope to see you on the 21st of April in our webinar for the Knowledge Company. Hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Sander Marijnissen and I'm managing partner at TKC Digital. Knowledge management boring? No way. I will tell you the whole story during the April 28th Service Tomorrow session. See you then.
Hi, my name is Matthijs and I'm co-founder of Civics. I'm going to guide you through the world of RPA and AI and show you how these technologies combined create digital workers or virtual colleagues that help contact centers go to the next level.
Hi, my name is David Pugsley. I work for Magia Consulting, and on the 19th of May, I'm going to be talking to Chloe Hoggard about talking to strangers. We look forward to seeing you.
My name is Tessa and I am the manager of the service content team at TKC Digital. It's my mission to answer more customer questions first time right. Together with my team, we create conversational copy and service content that do just that. I hope to meet you during the Service Tomorrow event. See you then. Bye.
Mijn naam is Daan Hortloos and I'll be joining TKC Digital at the Service Tomorrow events at the 23rd of June. And we'll be talking about how to be proactive in service. See you then!
Hi there, my name is Steven Hofmans and I'm a customer experience advisor working for SAS and the co-host of the Reimagine Marketing podcast. Listen, understand, act and automate. Want to know more? Register for the Service Tomorrow event from TKC and my session Customer Experience in Uncertain Times. Hope to see you there.